Hi, and welcome to another edition of The Journey with Joe, where we talk with successful entrepreneurs, business owners about their journey to success. I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Comma Insurance. They are the best. Give them a shout. They are great. Today, I am honored, privileged to have the man, Brian Erhahon, here with me. Keller Williams, like icon, bold coach, 30 under 30, like the guy who does it all, the second hardest worker in the room after Joe Soto, something I've said for years and years and years, a good friend and somebody that I admired for a long, long time. So, Brian, thank you for joining us and giving us some of your time, man.
You know, this is going to be interesting. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Because when you say that, second hardest working person, I think about, anyone else that would be disrespect. And yet, you know what? Joe, you could say that. You could say that.
I've been making that joke for a long time, and really where that comes from. So Brian is like the ultimate grinder, right? Hard worker, puts in the hours. And so when I first met Brian, that was like 12, 13 years ago, right?
Oh, man. Yeah.
And he was in college, and I'll never forget, he was in college, and I called him up, and he answered the phone, and he's like, I'm in class. Hold on. I'll call you right back. And I'm calling because I'm like, I'm talking to this professional realtor who I have to give him an update on his file. And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, sorry, I walked outside, man. What's up? And I was like, where are you? I'm in school. Yeah, but I do the real estate thing too, right? And then as I got to know Brian more, he's like the first agent I knew that used a dialer.
Oh, yeah.
But not a one-line dialer.
Four lines, brother.
4 lines, right?
Four lines.
One line is for the weak. I use one line. I'm a chump, right? Brian back, and this is like 2010, 9, somewhere around there, right? Like right when the market started to turn. And he's on the 4-line dialer, and he's like, I make 400 calls a day, and da-da-da. And I'm like, there's no way. And then I saw the data, and I'm like, this fool is on the phone just banging people, right? And so I joke, second hardest worker, because I consider myself a pretty hard worker, but you're definitely a guy who walks the walk, right? And in a world right now where people don't do that, I admire that a lot about you, right? Because from back then, so take me back to back then, right? Like, when did you get your license, and how did you decide I'm gonna do English 402 and then slang a house in the middle of a crash? Because you got your license, and it was like we were just coming out. It was coming out of doomsday, right? Like it was like, hey, buy this REO. It's a turd, but it's a good deal.
Yep, 75% of the homes were foreclosed or distressed, right? Short sales or foreclosures.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you mentioned that, the whole college, you just kind of go back in a time warp here, and I'm thinking, yeah, it was like that. Dialers and juggling class, and yet, it's necessity, right? You got to do what you got to do with what you have, and you have no choice, Yep. And I remember a Will Smith quote prior to him slapping people, and right, and he said, you never have a plan B, because plan B takes away from plan A.
Yep.
And I'm like, all right. So it was one of those things where I remember I was talking to my dad. He got me in real estate, and he was doing that when he was actually started in mortgage, and this was maybe 2003, 4. He's in mortgage, and I'm watching what he's doing, obviously as a kid, the upbringing and seeing the lifestyle, the work, and the patterns of getting stuff done. And so I'm thinking, okay, I could see this, and I start to get to that age of start thinking about what's next for me. And as a high schooler, okay, what am I going to do? And so I'm fortunate, he exposed me to that side of things early on. And I was really conscious of, okay, what does life look like? And I think honestly, and I talk to kids today, and whether it be siblings or friends or, just having a teenager now, it's like, looking back at it, like, man, I was really blessed to have an idea of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And for me, it was either, playing basketball, or I was going to start a business. And that business was either going to be lending or real estate, And it's funny, I was talking to my dad, and I was like, hey, look, I'm thinking about, and I remember looking for a job. This is like in that time period of high school. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about getting into insurance. I remember him looking at me, and you being a dad, and you kind of like, I know he wanted to say, hell no, what the hell are you thinking?
What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
Right? And he's thinking about that. And I could see him process. And he said, look, if you want to do that, great. However, I can't help you in insurance. That's not my thing.
Yeah.
If you wanna have like a foundation to build off of, here I do mortgage and or real estate at that time. He was transitioning. And I was like, okay. And I went through the whole process, did the application, and I get a call, and I just never called back because I was like, I might as well just get in real estate. So that got me going. And so he sent me to a partner with this real estate school. This is like maybe 2008. Went through that whole process.
Kaboom. It's like kabooming in the rest of the world. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to get my license.
I should have known when I was like the only one in the real estate school. Literally, it's a show up on a Saturday, crash course, and it's just me and the instructor. So I had no idea what was going on.
That's the best.
So I do the 3 courses, get the 3 courses done. And then, life happens. I'm in college at that time. And then I just lose my mind and start partying and all that kind of stuff. And then I got too into the college side of things, right? It's the party and it's all that.
For sure,
stuff.
yeah,
so
lots of distractions.
So I had that for the first couple years. So I ended up, Brian, academic probation, right?
Yeah.
The first year, right? Because I'm not focused. So, and then, obviously I'm younger and figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
And life happens, the Great Recession, and financially, college becomes tough. So overnight, my funding, which was my parents at that time, dries up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, shoot, what am I going to do? So then I moved back. So people don't usually leave school and then come back. And so I left school for about a year and a half.
Went back home?
Went back home, moved home, did the whole
Palmdale.
thing, all that. Yeah, went back to Palmdale. And then, I got a job at a authorized dealer selling cell phones, T-Mobile.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so I'm the guy in the kiosk telling you, come on, that's your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, get rid of that thing. I got a new one. I got a deal for you. Right? Hey, is that, come here. I got, right? So I'm the guy. I'm that guy.
That was you.
So I'm learning early on.
Funny.
By the way, I started selling in my selling career. I've always been a salesperson, selling Cutco. So like I was selling high-end ass kitchen knives and stuff like that.
Cutting the penny.
Yeah, all that, right? So that's where I started learning that so I had no fear of talking to people. Going back to the dialer.
Yeah.
And so I have that conversation, in my mind, like, I'm doing this thing, so I'm just going to do this before, right before, I get back to school. And then I'm thinking I'm doing well. In the first couple months, I get promoted to assistant manager. I'm like, okay, I'm moving up, $3,000 a month, whatever. $30,000 a year. I'm so happy, so excited I made it out. Right? Yeah. And then I get a call from my manager one day. At that time, or I think it was a regional, and he says, "Hey Brian, heads up, don't come in the office today, or come into the kiosk today." I say, "Well, what's going on, man?" Roy, his name was Roy. Roy, what's going on? He says, "Well, look, the company went bankrupt." Oh. Now, by the way, this is a company that's like 150 locations across the country. He's like, literally, company went bankrupt. I'm like, what in the world?
How does that happen?
So I said, no, this is like 2000 and I want to say maybe 7 or 8, 9, and he says. And I say, so what in the world am I supposed to do, Roy? He says, he literally, the guy was, I think it's like, you couldn't make it this up. It's in the movie. He says, well, I don't know. I mean, good luck. I mean, I'm out of a job too. So best to you. I'm like, and then just hangs up.
That was it.
And
Thanks,
like,
Roy.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah. Like, so I get my unemployment. Yeah. Right. I'm like, oh shoot. So then after that, I was like, I think in our lives, we have defining moments.
Yep.
Right, those moments where you're like, I never will go back to this. I will never allow myself to be in this situation again.
For sure.
And I've had a few of those moments. And I think sometimes when those happen, let's not just breeze over it. And I think they come in different forms. It's not always a job loss. It could be a loss of a relationship. It could be a vetting form. It could be a financial situation. It could be a whatever it might be, a health situation. Yeah. Those defining moments happen so often. And I think a lot of times people don't slow down and think about what does that mean for them and how do they make sure that they learn from it. And so for me, that was that moment. So I went in and I was like, I have my 3 certifications. Let me go send it in. Literally, I just had to send it in. So I sat on that for about a year. Oh, so wow. I did my certifications for my real estate school, had it all done. didn't do anything with it. So I'm like, go home. I'm moving. I got my job. I'm hanging around with old friends. We have all those old friends who like.
You were probably just bitter too that you were going back home. Right?
Yeah, all of that.
There was a lot of
just junk, and so now I'm when you think you're moving up, and you initially I left school and left the area in Palmdale. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm out. You'll never see me again, right?
Yeah.
And
now you're coming.
It's 2 years later. I'm back, and I'm like, oh. And worse than ever.
Yeah.
Right. So then that was that moment of, okay, well, how do I suck it up? How do I learn? So sometimes you got to step back. And that's been a part of my life. I've seen those patterns of sometimes you got to pull back, get back into that.
That's humbling.
That it's
a humble pie.
It's a pattern interrupt of,
right.
Ripping off that comfortable Band-Aid. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you might find yourself in a routine where you're just going through the motions, and unless you give yourself a pattern interrupt, I'd rather give myself a pattern interrupt, disrupt myself before somebody else or something else disrupts me.
Yeah.
Right. Do it on my terms versus, getting laid off, getting fired, whatever it might be.
It's the worst. The stuff you can't control is the worst.
Right.
Right. Especially if you're you and me who love control.
Yeah.
And we want to take control of our own lives, of our own outcome.
You gotta do it.
That when something like that happens, it's just it's annoying.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But two, you just are helpless. And then you have that moment where you're like, this isn't going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I can write my own ticket.
I will never let that. And so that was that choice. So fast forward, I get my license. And then, I'm underneath my dad at that moment, learning the process, getting my internship in, if you will. Then after that, I went back to school a changed person, right? At that moment, I was a party promoter, essentially, in the first 2 years. Obviously, that's why I wasn't in class. And yet,
but
right,
you threw one lit party.
My parties were
insane.
were pretty legit, at that time.
Too bad none of those people need to buy real estate now. That'd be great.
We're circling back around, right? We're us millennials.
If you were keeping a database back then,
oh, hey.
Yeah, you would have been. Although you'd be emailing everybody's MySpace.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it was Facebook when it first came out. When you got an event invite in Facebook, and you're like 99% of people responded, yes or no. That was it. You opened them all first, started getting spammy.
Yes.
We literally threw parties through Facebook. That was that time, that era, where you had that EDU, and you're like, that's the way that you got into Facebook. Oh, you must be in school. So that's a whole nother conversation, Joe.
Yeah. So then you get your license, you go back to school.
Yeah, and so now I'm a changed mindset.
So how'd you decide you were going to be like in school and actually sell real estate?
It was
because I think I don't you were with Keller.
Yeah.
Tustin.
So at that time my license was hung up in the Antelope Valley, so Palmdale.
Okay.
Keller Williams' office. So my license was there. However,
I'm interested to find out how you wound up with how'd you wind up with a client?
Yeah.
You must have did open houses or something.
So I lived in, at that time I was living in a room for rent in Fullerton, across the street from Cal State Fullerton. And so when there's a will, there's a way, all the other, sayings and whatnot. So as soon as I moved back, I knew, okay, I wasn't going to get another job. Real estate was my job. It was going to be balanced in between, student aid and grant and, paying my, and getting closings. And so, and then my EDD, right, essentially was my bridge to get myself set up in real estate. So I was like, as soon as I remember my last, and I think it gave me maybe 3 or 4 months or 5 months, my last EDD check, 2 weeks later, I closed my first transaction.
Oh, wow.
So it was that bridge. And some folks, you use that as a crutch. And then for me, it was a bridge just to get into the business. And so it was just that mindset of, I got to make it work. There's no will.
There's no plan B.
I remember getting, in the middle of course or class, I had like a routine. So of before class, wake up, get my practice going. So every single day I would start practicing my skill set. So my scripts, what I'm going to say I had flashcards. So I didn't even have flashcards for school, and yet I have flashcards for objection handling in real estate. So every single day I'm walking to class and I got, flashcards. Would you cut your commission, right? What's that? And then what do you say on the back? And then flip it over, right? Would you, I've got a friend in the business. So that was literally, I started training myself. So every day walking to class, it was flashcards, reading.
That's
right?
gangster.
So that was my process. And so I remember I was prospecting for sell by owners, expireds, all of that in my, I didn't have an office to go to. So it was in my shared room for rent, call in the morning, build my skill set, and then hit the road or start walking to class, hit class, had appointments. Then I would go back to, do that, go back to class. So there's all those moments of, look, I just worked on time blocking.
Yeah.
When do I have to be class? When I have to be in client appointments? And that was it. And really, it was just my, you know what, I have no choice. I'm just going to do it, or I'm not going to do it. And yet I'm going to do it.
So it was your drive. It sounds like you were obsessed to a certain extent, right? You were like, this is my goal. This is what I have to do. Like, there was no plan B.
No.
Right? It wasn't like, I'm going to go back and find another kiosk, because there was a lot of kiosks at the mall. You could have, that kiosk could have closed, and you could have been like pretzel guy.
If
like
I would have
now,
stayed
we would be,
and did that, I probably would have had, a few kiosks myself by now. Right.
But that's what, I
Best
think when you talk about like that defining moment, right? Like, I think you had two options, right? And option number one would have been, yes, this one closed down. Let me find the next kiosk, right? And let me go wherever. Let me go to T-Mobile, or let me go to whatever.
That's true.
And you were like, no, I'm better than this. I'm not going to let this happen to me again.
And I think I had just read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
Like about 6 months prior, and then just stuck in my head. And I'm like, all right, let me get out of that.
You're like, I'm not going to be in the rat race.
No, well, not working for anyone anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And there's different types of rat races, whether it be W-2, 1099. You got business, right? Invest. So it's getting out of the rat race of the W-2E mindset and getting into the self-employed, and then turn business owner, and then turn investor, right? So, the thing about that book, which going into the cash flow quadrant, again, a lot of my life has been all about education and learning based. So throughout my career, it's been what have I learned and developed. And so when I look at that book, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then the cash flow quadrant.
Oh,
really?
Okay. I haven't read that.
That one is a fire one too. It talks about every different way that you earn an income has a different mindset. So whether it be W-2, 1099, so the E is employee, S is self-employed, B is business owner, I investor. So those four quadrants, there's a different mindset. You can make money in every one. Actually three, right? Because it's really hard to be an employee and a self-employed person. It's usually one or the other. And then you can run a business and you can be an investor. So it's like, pick your main income, and then what's your side income turn main income once you have the ability to cross that bridge. So
what was that called?
Cash flow quadrant.
Okay. That's good.
So that started to get me ready for these for the building of my real estate sales business. So like, fast forward when I got done with school, after that I was like, all right, I'm done. So I go to and at this time I looked up a Keller Williams office initially in Orange County, and there wasn't one there. So this was like 2009, 2010 when I got my license. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I'll just hang my license there. I'll just educate myself, and I'll sell myself on that. Now, fast forward, when I got done with school 2 years later, I looked it up, and there was a Keller Williams office literally on the street that I was living on.
Oh, wow.
On Yorba Linda Boulevard, right? So after school, so I go down the way. I remember it was June 1st I set my appointment for.
Oh, wow.
Walk into the office June 1st, 2012.
Okay.
And so at this point, I was already in the business for 2 years, and working, basically self-educating, getting myself set up. So then I go into the office, and I meet, and there's the team leader at that time gets set up, and so I'm in, right? So June 2nd, I'm in the office, I'm working. And I remember at that time I had just ruptured my Achilles, right? And so from playing basketball,
I remember that.
I had my boot.
I remember the boot.
I remember going out and door knocking with my boot on. Yeah. At that moment,
I remember you going out and showing homes.
Yeah.
And was it your right Achilles?
My left one.
It was your left Achilles. I remember calling you, and you were like, "Oh, I'm on my way to show homes," and I was like, "Dude, you just ruptured your Achilles. Like, I think you just had surgery," and you were like, "That was like 2 days ago," and I was like, "Dude, this guy's so gangster." Like, because it was right away. You just you went for it, and I think that's what it takes, right? Like, I think when you talk to people who want to be successful, they look at the excuse, right? Like, I ruptured my Achilles. Right. let me wait until my Achilles gets better, and then I'm going to start prospecting and calling people, versus saying, I got to work. Like, I got to get it done right now. Like, this is a challenge, right? But it's not debilitating, and it's not going to stop me from achieving my goals.
Yeah.
So having that unstoppable mindset is very few people have that, right?
It's learned, and I think you can inherit it, and yet it's also learned, right? And so it's harder when you've got to learn it yourself, unless you have somebody in your life growing up that has helped you model that, right? And you may not have unknowingly model it. I got a lot of that from my parents. Yeah. And then from there I started developing and cultivating it myself to fine tune it to what I have today, of the mindset of hard work and just resilience at the end of the day, right? Yeah. So it's hunger. Right? It's hunger. You know, anytime I partner with anyone in any business that I'm jumping into, particularly around real estate, it's are you hungry, humble, and coachable? Right, because those are the three things that I know that I am, and that's the culture of the people that I'm working to partner with, and so you know, going back to how I got into real estate, so I go to my team leader at that moment, and I said, hey, look, I got to make it. I don't, and I'm big on artificial deadlines and accountability in any way that and I've always shared my goals, always shared my intentions. That's something that's really helped me. So I went to him and I said, hey, every single day that I'm not in the office by 7 a.m., I'm going to pay you $5. Oh. Now, that $5 was everything to me because, you know, it was that was my Subway, you know, it was at the $5 foot long. Yeah. Right? That was my lunch, bro.
Before inflation.
That was it, right? So, now it's like $7.
Now they're like $9.99.
Right? So now for me, that was something that I had to do to make sure that I was going to be in the office no matter what, or I'm always paying somebody. Yeah. And that was a key thing for me. So 7 a.m. in the office, and I would oftentimes be the first one. So I'm turning on the lights, I'm making the coffee. Yep. And to this day, I run across people in our just around Keller Williams and people from that office. I remember being in what was it? I think it was family or mega camp, right, in Austin, and I'm talking to somebody that I had interacted with in that office, a good friend of mine in that office, and he had somebody that was with him. He was like, man, one thing about Brian, and much like you, man, the guy is the hardest worker that I've ever seen, right? So for me, it was like 7 a.m. in the office, and the reason I started doing that was because I know if I'm in the office at the very early, I have a little bit of room for error in my day. Yeah. Right. Cause I'm early. I've done, if I'm in the office all day, I will get by happenstance, I will get things done. The most important things done. Now I had to, over time, that's been, reconfigured because now I'm more efficient with my time and the ability to say no versus just getting in super early and being in all day. Yeah. So, that was my first, and by the way, when I got started, I only had like a 1 month's worth of rent in my account. Ooh. So I go to my leader and I said, hey, $5 every single day I'm in. So that just caused me to be in. Yeah. So then that was June. So June had been paid. I only had July's rent at that time. And so I'm like, you know what? No plan B. So I'm all planning. So literally I'm running my business as if I'm in the real estate business full time with 1 month's worth of rent in my account. Damn. And so I called. I remember that August, and this is funny because I might be blasting people in this conversation. So this is probably August. By August comes up, and I'm working all through June, working through July, and I'm building the pipeline. And August comes up, and I'm like, all right, family member. That's why I don't put names out. Family member. I don't have it right now. I am. I've got, I'm building this business, blah, blah, blah. And so I remember calling my family member at that time. And I remember she says, how about you just go get a job? I'm like, oh. All right, scratched off my list, no problem. Next family member. Called. And then second call, nope, don't have it. Third call was like, all right, I'm going to give you a shot. Good luck. That was actually for my dad, right? The last call. That was my last. Here you go. Good luck. Right. So I have August paid for. Perfect. And this is where I kind of stop and I pause and I say, if you don't believe in your career or whatever venture that you're going in enough to be able to influence, prospect, persuade, or raise capital to give you more runway to set your business up, then you're not in the right business, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fall short because they don't know if they can personally do it, and because of that, they stop digging, and because they stop digging, any future opportunities that they would have had are gone to the next person, and now they're looking for something to do or plan B because that plan A looks really scary.
Yeah,
so
it's easy to have that self-doubt,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I it's easy to all of a sudden feel like,
Yeah,
I can't, I won't, it's not
Oh,
going to
yeah.
happen, right? I mean, it's just
absolutely.
those thoughts get in your head so easily, and especially in this business where you fail 90% of the time,
All the time.
right? Like you just have to be good at failing. You have to
Build
fail
that
the most,
callus.
right? Yeah, you have to fail the most. I tell everybody I get the most rejection of everybody, right? Like I talk to
You have to.
other loan officers and people, and they're like, "Man, Joe, you're this and this and this," and I'm like, "No, dude, I get the most FUs than anybody you've ever met,
Statistically, that has to happen in our business.
for sure."
Statistically, that's the only way that you can grow larger is by extroverting yourself to the mass amount of people.
Yeah,
Not everybody's going to dig you. Not everybody's ready.
correct.
One thing that I do, I was in a coaching session last weekend where now in this venue or medium with Keller Williams, I'm able to coach a lot of people in group settings. So I just finished out a 2 month long. So it was basically 7 weeks, once a week for 7 weeks. I had 4 different locations I was coaching. So I had about 250 people that I was coaching at that time
Nice.
in several different groups every week for 7 weeks. And I tell people, and most of the people that you'll talk to, 95% of the people that you talk to in real estate are all not yets. If you look at them as no's, then you will look at them as no's, which will hinder your progress to keep following up and keep adding and talking to people.
Yeah.
And yet you're just looking at everybody as not yets.
Yep.
And you're building your pipeline. So my believability and my pitch to my dad at that moment and several other family members was because I knew I had been building up a pipeline of not yets, and it was only a matter of time. So funny enough, after I get that infusion of capital or loan, right?
Because he wanted his money back.
Right, yeah.
He's like, "Son, you gonna pay me."
Well, I mean, any investment, right? Any business person would. And he said, and so I do that. Within 2 weeks, I opened my first 2 escrows.
Oh wow.
2 weeks after that, open my second, or next month. So I go from nothing in 3 months to, in just 6 months being out of what I think at that time 170 agents or so, being in the top 30 or 40.
Yeah.
Right, because in 6 months, I was,
And that's so many no's or so many not yets.
real fast.
Right? Like and it's months, right? I feel like this market that we're in right now, as we're sitting here having this conversation, you have to do 10 times the activity, right? To do less deals. So it's full of not yets, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I like that expression, the not yets, right? Because I think you were doing all of that work, right? It's 2 of my favorite books are Go for No, right? Where you talk about going for the rejection and then Win in the Dark. Right. And win in the dark is really good because you have to do it. It reminds me a lot about basketball players, right? And like a Kobe Bryant, for example, who was shooting free throws and 3-pointers when nobody's around.
In the gym. You wouldn't with me shooting in the gym?
Right. Yeah. So you were doing all of that work in the dark, but you knew it was going to come to fruition. You were like, Dad, I know it's going to hit. Like, eventually they're going to start, the buckets are going to start to fall.
Yeah.
And they did, they
Yep.
did. And it's just, it was all that work that nobody saw.
I'm thankful for that moment because that's created the callus, the fortification, the resilience to say, I'm in. The hardest thing to do is to get in, right? And stay in. And once you're in and you've stayed in, now it's about, now you can make your decisions and your choices of what direction within that vehicle I get to drive.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get the ability to be in the game.
Yeah.
And so after that, man, it was just, we started building, sold, continued to sell. So in the following year, in top 20 in production out of, I think it's 17 out of, I think 250, because we were growing pretty hard, 250, 300. And then after that, I started getting into the, and one thing I would say is be very clear of how you choose to work.
Yeah.
Because most people aren't clear about their personality style and what they do every single day. And we know behavior is like a rubber band. Like you may jump into a role or a position that doesn't fit you, and now you're stretching to be the thing to win at that role, and yet that's not who you are naturally. And then over time, you're fulfilling a role, and yet you're not getting any fulfillment. And then what happens with an overstretched rubber band?
It loses.
Yeah, it loses its elasticity, as well as if you snap it too, or if you stretch it too much, it snaps. How many people have you seen on the job, or you've heard on the job, who've snapped, who was like, I'm done, I'm burnt out, I'm not coming back?
I just had one tell me that yesterday.
Right? And so,
I don't want to put her on blast. I don't want to put... Sorry, I probably did by saying her.
Yeah, there you go. It's 50-50 now.
If she gets this far in this podcast, she's going to know. And yes, I am talking about you.
Well, and so know your strengths.
Yeah.
Play to your strengths. And that's been something that I've always done. I've been fortunate to create a career in real estate, which very few get to do, about playing to a role that you love, that you wake up and you can, like you're challenged every single day, and yet it doesn't hold you down, and you're inspired, you're motivated. Like nobody has to get you up in the morning to go to get you dressed and go do what you do. It's like it's a natural thing. And so obviously all those sayings about do what you love and all that is great. My point is know your strengths, because a lot of times, whether it be business owners or agents, like they look at other people and they compare their insides to other people's outsides, and they're like, oh, well, they're doing this much business by spending this much on internet leads or opportunities there. Okay, well, I guess in order for me to do it, I got to mortgage my house.
Yeah.
Which I've been in coaching and leadership development. I've seen that scenario, an agent leveraging or more. Like I've known an agent to bankrupt themselves literally by spending a ton of money on online leads and didn't have the skill set to convert, right? Because they've never been a phone person or a salesperson, or they had no sales, and yet they thought it was just as easy as paying for leads. Yep. And that's not the case. So it's a dangerous thing. Or you're like, hey, that person is doing a whole lot of events, and let me go do that, and I'm gonna go out and
I think comparison is the thief of joy. Somebody told me that a couple of years back. And I used to live in the gap, right? And I used to I'd look at other people. The gap in the game.
Oh my God, I could snap to that.
I would live in that gap. And they told me comparison is a thief of joy. And I was like, shoot, man. Yep. I'm like, I do that all the time, right? So now I've gotten out of it. Now I'm so hyper focused on my own lane, right? Like what everybody else is doing. Even in this market, I looked up about a month ago. Somebody was like, XYZ company closed down, and so did this company, and so did this company, and so did this company. And I'm like, I had no idea, dude. I'm just trying to help people buy houses.
That's it.
And they're like, you had no idea? And I'm like, nope. I'm worried about my walls, my family. And I'm just so hyper-focused on what I can control versus all of the other stuff, right? Like I have no control over the Fed meeting and inflation, but I can control my activities every single day. I can control my attitudes every single day. Yep. And if I bring that, I'm going to have success. Yep. Now, whether that success comes right away or it just takes more, but it's going to come eventually, because you just can't lose if you're doing all the work.
And I think a lot of what we have the opportunity to do is, master your craft. Yep. That's something that you and I were talking before the record night went on, was about, being a master of what you're doing. I could tell you, obviously, because this is me to you, I'd say, hey, Joe, you've mastered your craft, right? Because look, you've done that. It's in the numbers. You don't brag about it as much. I'll brag on you, right? Just Thanks, because, you've built something and I was there when.
You were there.
I was there when.
Yeah.
We'd have these conversations about what we were going to build, what we were going to do, and all those things. And I'm excited to say that you've done and you've built all those things. And Humble Joe, right? Humble Joe Pie here does not talk about his greatness enough. And I love that you're doing this, because, it gives other people a chance to say how great you are because of your consistency.
Yeah.
And I don't open up my social channels without seeing Joe Soto in my feed. And
my cheesy grin. There's his smiling face.
And yet it's a you don't get that without having the hunger and the care for what you do.
Going after it, man,
and
every
so
day.
You know your strengths. And so for me, I had to learn what my strengths are. And that's where I started to leverage myself and to do, okay, if it's not paperwork, it's not organization, who can I partner with, who can make me better, and to bolster my weaknesses and get stronger in my areas of opportunity and focus what I do well. And so that was it.
Cool.
And so after that, it just really started to turn into, from there, fast forward to brokerage leadership, managing an office.
So let's jump on that. We're going to take a quick little break.
Sponsor? Do we have another sponsor?
We're going to do a little sponsor break, take a little break, and then we're going to go into leadership coaching. I know you do a lot of that, a lot of growth stuff, and really just share a lot of that because I think people hunger coaching, right? And people want to be coached and led, but it's a fine line because some really love it and some are like, don't tell me what to do.
Right.
So we'll get into that in a little bit. Are you sick and tired of watching your annual insurance premiums go up every single year? If so, give my buddy Tim Jarvis a call at Comma Insurance for a free estimate and a look back at your insurance, whether it's home or auto. Tim is going to do a great job. He's going to shop around with different companies that he works with to make sure that you are getting the best deal possible and stop the bleeding of that payment going up each and every renewal. Tim Jarvis at Comma Insurance, he is the man. Give him a shout, 562-883-3944. That's Tim, 562-883-3944. Tell him Joe Soto sent you. Now back to the show. All right, so I mentioned bold coach. I mentioned coaching. I'm a big believer in coaching, right? I say it all the time that coaching changed the trajectory of my life.
It did.
Right?
I was there.
You saw it.
I'm a witness.
Yeah, but you were a witness.
I'm a witness.
I talked to my wife about getting out of coaching, and she's like, never. I'm like, I don't know. She's like,
that says a lot.
Yeah, she's like, you need all those crazy humans in your life.
That's a lot.
And I felt like for a long time, I did a lot of activity, but with no purpose. Right? Like I did a lot of stuff, but it didn't generate me any income. I felt busy, but not productive. Right? So now I saw you do one of the most amazing things I've ever seen anybody do. Right?
Oh, waiting. What was that?
So I walk into Brian's office circa 2015, 16. He's on a 17-line dialer. And he's got a magazine on his wall. And it's the top 30 under 30.
Oh, you're talking about go for it. Oh.
Right? And there's a bunch of people on this magazine, and I look real close. And I'm like,
I did do
that dude looks like you. And you're like, yeah, I cut my head off and I put it on that dude's body.
I did do that.
Right? And I was like, you what? And you're like, yeah, I'm going to make this list. And I was like, I didn't know what it was, right? I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. But I thought it was funny, right? I was like, this clown took his little head off his business card.
Off the business card.
Right? Like he used an X-Acto knife.
Yeah.
Cut his perfect little head out.
Yep.
And I know you still have that somewhere.
I do have it somewhere.
And you put it up. And I was like, all right, whatever. And then a couple of years later, fast forward, I get an email from Brian who goes, hey, bro, I need your vote.
Yeah.
Right? Voting for top 30 under 30. I'm 29 in 11 months.
Yeah.
So I need to get in. And what happened?
Did it. And got my face where the guy's body was.
That's right. You had a badass picture, too. That was an awesome photo shoot.
It was very interesting. They were like, hey, we're not going to do anything that we normally do. We usually have like, the top 10 or 15 fly in and do the shoot. We're like, we're only going to narrow it down to 3. And you're going to be one of those 3.
Wow.
Like, shit.
Yeah, dude, that was
Bro,
that was amazing.
I remember where I was, what I was doing when I got that call.
Really?
And I remember,
dude, look, it gives me chills.
Lady's name was Julie, and Julie calls me and says, "Hey, Brian." So, and I don't even know that I knew that it was like I made the
Just
30
3?
under 30. Yeah.
Oh.
So like I felt like I got the call, and I had maybe just found out that I was 30 under 30. And literally like the next day, the lady calls me and said, "Hey, Brian, congratulations on your 30 under 30. And we want to fly you out." Like,
nice.
fly me out where?
Yeah.
Chicago. What? Why? She says, "Well, we're going to do something different this year. And instead of, all 30 or 15 or 10, we're going to just make it 3.
Oh, wow. So the 3 of you did like this.
Literally, there was the 3 on the cover. There was only 3 people.
Oh, really?
And that's like a whatever limited edition, whatever.
Because the one you put your head on, there was like 17 fools on there.
There was a bunch of folks on there. So I put I had to look at the color scheme right.
Yeah.
I gotta make sure I can at a glance believe it was me.
Oh, dude, it was the greatest. I mean, and I remember that so vividly, right? And you just busting your butt to make that list, and so you busted your butt to do that, and then you get into the coaching side of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so totally different from sales. Yeah. Sales and coaching is 2 different worlds, right? Like I do coaching here at my company, and I coach some loan officers, and it's like a different hat I have to wear.
Right.
And what I love about coaching others is it really holds myself accountable.
Tough.
Right? Like put myself on blast. We did role play last week.
Yeah.
I haven't done role play.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
It's been a while.
It's been a while since Joe Soto has done
the market hasn't needed it.
Right. And so
in a lot of cases.
I'm like, look, if I'm going to teach you guys, if I want you guys to do it, then I have to lace them up.
Right.
And I got to show you that I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm going to be about it.
True.
Right. So we did role play. So I think when you're coaching, yes, you're teaching others, but you're also teaching yourself. Mm-hmm. Right. Like you're giving. And I think we talked a little bit about that, right? Like, you're giving and you're pouring into others, but it's holding you to a certain level of accountability, which ultimately makes your skills better. So how did you make that shift, like to go into the coaching side of it? Because you're doing bold like 100 times a day, and then you're on coaching calls, and then you're talking to people that like are like in Antarctica or something. I don't even know. They're selling igloos and stuff. Like, so how did you make that shift, and why did you make that shift? Because I know you did team leader. Like you've worked your way up the ladder, man. You've done an amazing job.
I'm grateful. I think for me personally, it started with my focus on self-mastery, right? And we have in our company 6 principles that our founder created, and one of them 6 principles for success, like the 6 personal perspectives, we call them. Yeah. And one of them is self-mastery, or committing to self-mastery. And I relate that a lot to 80% of my growth. And I don't even really, success is relative. So my success may not be your success, right? Yeah. So I don't really attempt to call it success. I'd say my growth as an individual, right? And one belief I have is my business grows to the extent that I do. Yeah. Right. And so as long as I'm growing myself, my business will grow. And we know that every business trails the trajectory of its leader. So the leader trajectory, I could say that about you, man. I mean, the fact that we talk every so often, we talk regularly, and yet every so often, not always about books and growth and personal stuff. It's usually about business. And yet, the fact that I can pinpoint certain language that you use that I know you got from a book, right? When you talk about, the gap, staying in the gap. And I'm like, oh, you've been on some Dan Sullivan, right? Yeah. Right. Totally. Who, not how is another good one, right?
That's a good one.
So my point is I've always had that yearning for self-mastery. And so, I knew when I went to that course, I actually went to Bold first as an agent, and fast forward, I went 12 times. It's a 7-week course, and it's all about mindset, skill set, and it's working smarter, not necessarily harder, right? Kind of like your point around of like doing stuff, and yet not always knowing if the stuff you're doing is going to pay out. Yep, 100%. And I see, and so I experienced that with myself personally as an agent, and then that really started getting me going. So. As an agent, I was developing myself, and at this one moment, I got into the growth curve, really on fire about it. I read a book a week for 2 years, And that book a week, and it was a hack, a learning hack. So for me, it was, I use Audible, right? And Audible has been my biggest saving grace to the growth of my trajectory. And
best tool ever. If you're not using Audible,
if you're not using it, you have to.
You're failing at life. Yeah,
it's 90% of the people that read like are extreme readers, and that's the thing that we can coin, extreme readers. Use Audible, and whether it be visually seeing it or audibly, I do a little bit of both. So I'll, if I'm in the car, so like one thing I eliminate is I don't listen to music in the car
ever.
Only if I'm with other people, which is like entertainment mode.
I make my kids
listen. Right.
You ask my little one, and she will remember. I made her listen to Make Your Bed.
I would say don't tell me some Goggins.
Not Goggins. No, not. But she'll remember vividly that we listened to Make Your Bed driving to like a soccer game.
Nice.
And there's a part in that book where the guy jumps out of a plane and his parachute doesn't open.
Wow.
And he hits the ground.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's one of the greatest books ever. You have to listen to it. It's like McCracken, I think, is the guy who wrote it. And he talks about
the guy lived to
write a book. The guy
lived to write a book.
And my daughter still, like, if I'll put it on a book, she'll be like, is this the guy with the parachute? And I'm like, yeah. So, like, even with the little one that you have, you start playing that stuff.
Yeah.
They're going to pick up on it because they're sponges.
That's one great way.
I love Audible.
To influence your environment is by bringing other people into the growth that you're experiencing, right? And so is sharing the book, sharing the knowledge, sharing the information, sharing all of those things. And so for me, it was that book a week. So I use Audible.
That's awesome.
Oftentimes I'll listen. So I'll listen while I'm working out. I'm listening to while like I'm driving, and then I'll pull it up and I'll do a quick little, voice to text. So like if I'm real quick, voice to text, write a note. Because a lot of people say, oh, I don't listen well to books and all that. My mind wanders. I had to train. Like it's a training. It's a muscle.
Yeah.
And so, and I also note, like I go back, I can tell you, I could show you every book that I've read in my notepad in my phone, because I do a voice to text note, every book I read. So
you actually will write yourself a note?
Every book I read, I start a new notepad in my phone. I use Google Keep. And so I could literally show it, like my highlights of every single book that I've read over the last however many years.
That's a life hack.
It's
for everybody out there. That's a life hack.
Because I'm gonna write a book one day, right? And then it's gonna be a reference to everything that I've learned throughout my process. So like I know I have a highlight reel, if you will, or notebook for every book I read, and so today, like my Audible account has like 200 and something books in it.
Wow.
And I started like 2014.
You're crushing me.
Wow. I mean, shoot, it's.
So I downloaded.
I just started getting on the parent trend, right? So I got kids now.
Yeah. So I'm coming down.
I'm slowing down right now. You'll pick up. You'll pick up.
I got like mold. I got 2 books that just came into the house, and so I've got both of them. I have to read. So I'll download the book, listen to it, and then I'll read it. Yeah, because I'm crazy.
That helps.
So then I'll read the book and then write notes.
Oh, your internalization is crazy.
Yeah, and I'm just like, my wife's like, "Art, didn't you just do that book?" I'm like, "I did," because she sees my Instagram posts. She's not reading them, but so then you get into coaching, and it's just now you're pouring into all these other people, right? And so, that fills your cup, right? Like that's a different cup. Mm-hmm. So now you're helping these other people all over the place, right? Like you just did Bold all over. California. You were here. You were in California.
So Fresno, Santa Monica, Palmdale, Redlands, just going back and forth. Probably like close to 1,500 miles a week driving.
So tell me about the biggest struggle you're seeing out there. Right, biggest struggle for real estate agents 2022. Like what is the 1, 2, or 3 things that you're seeing, and then how can they overcome that? I think I know a little bit of the answers, but it'd be interesting to see.
I've probably so far this year, to your point, I've probably been in front of close to maybe 1,000 agents that I've coached in those group settings, in those pods of 7 weeks, and in the past I used to do one-on-one. I'd have up to 30 people that I'd coach one-on-one, and I stopped doing that, and I was doing that in Bold at the same time, which is the group session. So I've come to have an understanding of the agent plight and the issue and the challenge, and particularly in California as well, and yet in general, most of it is the lack of planning. right? It's not having because when you think about it, planning is somewhat, it feels contradictory, right? When you're like, I'm sitting down, I'm having quiet time, I'm thinking about my failures, I'm reflecting on what didn't go well, what I could do better. In that 30 minutes or so or 15 minutes of thought process and another 45 minutes of actual writing, planning, implementing, scheduling, which I coach to, our top people do about 60 to 90 minutes per week. And there's a little extra time on there depending on if you're going to add in financial management to it, meaning budgeting, and all of those things, and making sure you know what your numbers are, your books, record keeping. The big thing that I would mention is that I think most agents it feels weird sitting down and reflecting. And you feel like you're not doing anything if you're not on the phone with a client, or if you're not coming up or creating a CMA, or if you're not, or comparing marketing analysis or value analysis. It doesn't feel like you're doing anything, and that's why most people put it aside. And yet, the busier you get, the more quiet time you have to have. Because I would imagine, for you, right, you lead a big team, a lean, mean, profitable machine, right? and yet you run that, and yet I'm sure your coach talks to you about when do you set time aside to plan, and making sure that you have time to go through your reflection items for the week. Look at your calendar. What did you do? What did you get done? When will you implement next, right? What will you do for the following? Those are practices that will help you course correct.
Integral to success, right? I will tell you the one thing I've gotten. Yeah, I had a coaching call today, and the one thing I've gotten better at is implementation, right? So we get on a call, and my regional manager goes, "So, who's done their calendar for 2023?" And I was
5 to 10%,
like 1%. Like it was me and two other people, right? And he's like all of it, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I can tell you my daughter's graduation party is June 27th.
Yeah, dude.
Right. I can tell you every class I'm doing, I can tell you that my client appreciation event is December 5th, 2023, right? So like I plan like no other. And a little bit of one of my struggles is that other people don't plan, where I'm OCD. Yeah. Right. Like my calendar is like the word of the Lord.
Well, for this meeting, I had to make sure I was 10 minutes early. Otherwise, I was going to be on Joe's bad side.
You could be late.
You beat me to showing up to stuff, and it irks me. So I just want to make sure that I knew to be here 10 minutes early.
Yes, to be early is to be on time. To be early is to be on time.
You've been great at that over our knowing each other, right? And being on time. And you do it purposefully.
That was Disney's fault.
To piss me off.
Yeah, so it's funny because I worked for Disney back in the day. I
didn't know that.
A long time ago, yes. And there was a guy, his name was Bill Knopf. I'll never forget the damn guy. And he would look at me, and I was an arrogant little punk, right? Like, I was a jerk at 23, 24. Like, and I knew I was a jerk. And he'd be like, well, Soto, way to show up. He'd be like, to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. And to be late is unacceptable.
Ooh.
And which are you?
It's a bar.
And I was like, I'm about 35 minutes late.
I guess technically I'm unacceptable for this conversation.
I wasn't even close, right? Like back then, it wasn't even close for me, right? Yeah. Like I wasn't even trying. But that line stuck with me, my wife, my kids, and somebody told me that time is the most valuable asset that you have.
Yep.
Right. And so I look at my time, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, right? Like I look back and I've missed out. I've been so hyper focused on business that I've missed out on a lot with my kids, right? Especially with my oldest, Brooklyn. I feel like there was a window there where dad was MIA because he was so focused on life and on work. Building. And so time is so valuable that I think a lot of agents struggle because they get into the business for flexibility. But in order to have success,
that's why it feels weird.
You need to structure.
Yeah.
And you need to time manage. You need a plan, right? Like having a plan, right? It's something like failing to plan is planning to fail or something like that, right? But that's a big problem.
There's a saying that it doesn't help, and yet it puts things in perspective. And I say it doesn't help because it's not going to give you the answer to your challenges, right?
Yeah.
The challenge being, how do you live at the extremes, meaning that you're cobbling together your business? How do you live at the extremes, meaning you're working later? How do you live at the extremes, meaning that you're 7 days a week right now, and yet in the middle, or like where your center is your family, and yet you don't have the ability to be in the center because you're so focused on the extremes, which is your work, your job, your opportunities that you're building for your center, your middle, your core, right? And it says knowing when to pursue the extremes and knowing when to pursue the core or the middle is in true essence the beginning of wisdom. So it's you've got to know when to be appropriate in the manner, in the time that you're in. Yeah. Right. And there's like saying, be where your feet are. Right. So if you're at work, be at work. If you're at home, be at home.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's
so hard in this business,
especially when you could work anywhere today.
Yeah. One of the things I've been really good at is I shut off my email. So I don't get email notifications. Right. Like that's gone. And I don't check email when I go home.
That's a boss move, though, by the way.
I walk in the door, and I'm not looking at email, right? Unless I'm literally like yesterday where the Lakers blew a lead and got blown out.
I want to talk about that. Thanks, Joe.
Sorry, buddy. But like or the Yankees got blown out. Yankees are down. Yankees are down 14. Then I might look at it, but for the most part, like I just don't. Right, because there's nothing I'm gonna fix at that time. But it's hard in this business.
Underwriters aren't available, processors aren't available.
Yeah, but we're in a customer service business.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like I look at it, if a client calls me or texts me at 7 or 8 at night, they're not gonna sleep. Right. Same thing. If the worst thing that could happen in my life is a client calls me at like 7 in the morning. You know why?
They've been thinking about you all night.
All night long. They've been thinking about that home purchase. Is it going to close? So when somebody calls me at 7 in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, I failed you. I'm so sorry. They're like, no, I'm good. I'm like, you didn't sleep. They're like, nope. I'm like, oh damn. So it's one of my big things. It rarely happens now, like very rare. But in the beginning, it was like all the time. People would call me first call in the morning, 8 o'clock. Like, when that phone rings at 8:01,
it's serious.
They were thinking about you all night long.
They've been waiting until they were looking at the phone at 7:55, waiting.
They were figuring out. They've been up since 6, deciding on when they were going to call you. Yeah. Sometimes with real estate agents, like there's no filter, right? Like I feel bad for real estate agents because clients will call you at 10, 11 o'clock at night. They don't care,
and it doesn't have to do with you always. It's about.
It's a title question or lender question.
Escrow, lender. And so you being in that, say, center, it's like, right, what do you do? And that's where it goes to knowing how you prefer to work. And one thing I had to learn about myself is knowing how I prefer to work, knowing my strengths. And so we're in a place now where, from starting as a manager for an office, and I say those terms in as a way for you to understand. We call it team leaders in our worlds as a Keller Williams practitioner, if you will, and we took from 60 agents to 200 at one moment and in a few years, and then that set up my opportunity to coach because I knew the models, the systems, knew how to work people. Because a lot of people don't understand that it's about behavioral science. You got to know people. You've got to EQ. EQ is the most underutilized asset, skill set in financial services and real estate. You're dealing with people's lives, livelihood, money, anything that that relates to where somebody lives, where they shelter themselves, their kids.
Tell people what EQ is real quick.
Emotional intelligence, man. Yes. You gotta be smart, right? People smart. Do you know how to treat people, make people feel good? Do you know how to help them problem solve and read between the lines?
By the way, the Lord didn't bless me with a lot of beautiful, like this ain't bringing sexy back. But God, He gave me a lot of that shit.
That EQ.
Oh man,
you've got really good EQ, man. I mean, you've got really good EQ.
Yeah, it's one of the things that God's blessed me with, where I can
even with your letters.
I talk to people. You get the letter. You get the letter of the heart.
Your letters is all EQ, man.
Yeah.
You're letting people know who you are, why you are, what you do, why you do it.
I've learned to make myself more vulnerable.
Yeah.
We call it my sister-in-law Sherry. She gets my letters. She calls it Vulnerable Joe.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I got a letter from Vulnerable Joe.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, yes, Sherry, you did. She's like, I just love it. I love when you're so vulnerable. And I'm like, I send those letters and they're so painful to send every time. Like they stress me out to write them 10 times. It's hard, but it's part of the journey, right? Like you share yourself, you put yourself out there, you offer to help more people. So
True.
I think that's all part of the whole package, you know. But that EQ is
got to do it. It's
so powerful.
Most
in
people
real
don't.
estate.
It's in sales. In helping people make good decisions, you've got to have EQ. Otherwise, you're going to take it personally when they say no.
Yeah.
That's why it's the understanding of what do you hear? Is it no or do you hear not yet?
Yeah.
Right. And training
Not
yourself
yet.
to do that. Right. So going back to coaching, and the reason why jumping into that, I've always had a heart for education, and anything that I've ever said yes to is all about, well, how can I get better? How can I increase my intelligence around, real estate IQ? How can I business IQ? So anything I've ever said yes to has been about what can I learn, whether it be running a brokerage, whether it be starting a sales team, whether it be owning a franchise, whether it be the next leg, and things have changed, right? Life changes, knowing your circumstances and know when to be appropriate in your moment. All those things change, and now, for us, as we look forward, we're excited to be venturing, like our sales operations for residential sales has always been good.
Yeah.
Hasn't been great because I've been focusing vulnerably, right? Vulnerable Brian here.
Yeah.
I've been focusing a lot on the education part of the science behind real estate, right? What to do, how to do it, why to do it, right? Helping other people earn that living, and that's how you do it, right? If you want to learn something well and you want to master it, go teach it, and that's been the track that I've been on, and so I've never really said personally, like, okay, here's what I want to sell a crap ton of real estate. We sell well. I mean, we're in the top percentage, and yet we're not in the 0.0001 yet.
Yeah.
And that's the intention. I've never made that. I've never made that decision to do that until recently. And obviously there's other reasons for that, and yet, so now it's about, how do we make sure in 2 years, and this is almost like, I'm gonna come back next podcast you invite me back on, right? The results are because the clock just started ticking, and how long do I want to give myself to hit this production level where
hit the goal?
We're doing over 100 million in real estate sales annually. You know what I mean? And so I've done, like, our brokerage side, we do about we'll end this year about 375 million in closed sales from a brokerage side standpoint, which is a little bit under about 650 transactions. Yet personally, like my personal sales team, right? That's with close to 200 people. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, I want to do a percentage of that with
just
7.
your team. Yeah.
Right. That's my intention, is we're going to do that with 7, because I know then when we can create that formula, right? And by the way, I've there's a ton of people around, like, talking about coaching. I just literally hired a coach that has done that for years. So,
that's how you learn, man.
Just hired my 3rd coach.
You don't try to reinvent the wheel, man.
I literally have 3 coaches right now.
I've learned that. Like, I call people. I'm like, so what do you do here?
Right. Literally, I just, I don't know why. And I was talking to my wife about this a couple of days ago. It's like, hey, I'm about to jump on it. So which coach? Are you coaching somebody? I'm being coached. All right, which coach is this? I'm like, oh, yeah, it's number 3. I'm like, what? What do you have?
Yeah.
3 coaches? Well, how great?
Does your wife tell you that you must be a mess if you need that many coaches? Because that's what my wife told me in the beginning. She's like, dude, you're a mess. Like she, in the beginning, she was like, why do you need a coach? Like, you're making good money. Yeah. Like, you're fine. And I'm like, no, these people make way more money.
Yeah.
Like,
they do better.
Yeah. I'm learning from, like, kings and queens.
Yeah.
She's like, this is dumb. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and
she
she's
won't
like,
let you get out.
She's like, dude, this is
go
like
reach
the best
out.
thing. Yeah. So
when in doubt, go reach out, right? Success leaves clues and all that stuff, as they say. And,
totally. And you learn, like, the most successful people will share.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've never met somebody who's super successful that's like, no, I won't help you. Because we've all been there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'll talk to anybody. I don't care if you're in mortgage and real estate and title and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm willing to share my pain and what I've done to be successful, because I feel like that's the least I can do.
Yep.
Right? And if I can give you some things and that helps you, great. Right? Yep. The thing that frustrates me, if I'm being totally transparent,
bring it,
is I give stuff to 90% of the people
and 5% use it. If that.
I'm dropping dimes, Brian. I'm giving like gold, like literally
your
I'm
best
going,
stuff. Like you're sweating.
Yeah. Hey, I messed up 100. I messed up 99 times. This is the one that worked. Do this. And they're like, that's dumb. I'm like, oh my God.
Or looking at you, not writing it down. It's like, oh yeah, I got a photographic memory.
Yeah.
Good.
So let's talk a little bit. We're gonna try to wrap this thing up a little bit. But so we're gonna talk about 5-year vision. Yeah. Right. I would like to talk forward, because then we're gonna look back on this and be like, oh, you know what? I check. Right.
It's accountability.
A little bit of accountability. But
Brian's got a big mouth. He talks a lot.
So I'll be honest. I've known you a long time, right? And I thought when I first met you, I thought you'd be in college forever.
Scenic route.
Right. And then one day,
you for that feedback.
not because of academic probation. No, but I was like, you're young.
Distracted.
No, I always thought of you as like young. Right now, I think I see a couple gray hairs in there.
I got
bro.
a few. I pluck them every once in a while.
Yeah, I think so. I remember you and me talking, and you were like, "I'm getting engaged," and I was like, "Are you engaged age?" Like, I think you're like 18 still. No, but you're not, obviously. Yeah. So now you got wife. Mercedes convinced you somehow that she made you a made man. So I like that.
I'm a made man.
Yeah, go Mercedes.
I'm
Shout out to Mercedes for turning him straight.
Yeah.
And now you got kids, got family, right? So now you got different types of responsibility.
Yeah.
That changes everything, right?
It does.
It really does. You're dealing with the little one and the older one and the wife, and she's a badass salesperson.
Yeah.
So you're in a tough spot because you're trying to sell a closer.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you know what's funny about that? And transparently, she's hilarious. You know, when her and us, like me and her in the same place together, it creates a lot of social, let's just say, enlightenment, because she is hilarious.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I'm okay, right? I can work a crowd, and yet she's amazing at that, and so I think her and I, so it's a partnership, right? At the end of the day, I'm fortunate to have an opportunity to partner in business with my best friend, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember when we were dating, and I'm in my world, I'm in my coaching things, and I do whatever I do, and she would ask me a question, or like we have some kind of back and forth, and I would say something, and she was like, "Don't hit me with your Brianisms." You know what I'm sitting there like, what do you mean? Are you Brianizing me right now?
Oh, like, man, she's calling you out.
And so I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
and so she that's it's harder. Like I'm being careful of or being aware of who you're with, right? And that's the reason I married her. She's a strong woman, and she knows how to bring it, right? Call me out of my stuff, which makes me better at the end of the day.
100%.
And so, shout out to right, bonus points, marriage points, right here.
Yeah,
and it's true. And
so
it's true. And so much like you and Kim, right? And it's like, I know she calls you out. You say it all the time.
She balances me out like 100%. I am like, we are yin and yang. It has to be. Like we've got different strengths. Her strengths are my weaknesses.
Vice versa.
1,000%. Right. Like, and I look at my wife, and I'm like, she looks at me. She looks at me and says, "I could never do what you do."
Yep.
And I look at her and I go, "I could never do what you do."
High five. We're doing it.
Right.
Right. High five. We're getting multiple things done.
Yeah. So fast forward, little one, the kids are going to get older, all of that stuff. Where do you see yourself, let's say 5 years from now? Because you're team leader stuff and looking to start and grow the team. So,
yeah, one thing that is important to us is we're intending to invest with our clients, right? So we're helping our homeowner clients, people who are buying homes in own property, and partnering with them essentially, right? And so not only helping them find deals, they want to buy it themselves, they can. If they want to partner on things that we're working on, they can as well. So we've actually started focusing on the rebranding of our sales team, and we've changed the name to focus directly on that mission. Nice. It's not just putting somebody into a home and saying, all right, see you later, which we've been guilty of in the past, and yet thinking about how can we build better relationship, how can we be more service, because no one ever wants to just be one and done in real estate. If you can buy one, you want to buy more.
Sure, like Monopoly.
And so why wouldn't you want to do that? And a lot of times people don't have that route. So, one thing that we're focusing on is buying more property with our clients, partnering with them, showing them the how-tos. So I actually started this prior to COVID, and I created a course called the Wealth Acceleration Program. And I had a 101, I had a 201, and I have a 301. And yet that's when a lot of things happen, and an opportunity came up for me to buy into a Keller Williams franchise, and so which I did. And so because of that got me into a whole lot of things. So we've kind of put that on the back burner for the last couple of years, and I'm very excited to get back into that side of it.
Nice.
As things have been more, we've come in, we've operated, we've set up some systems within that franchise. So now it's come back and say, okay, I got some time back plus Bold and the coaching sessions that I've done. So I've really streamlined my time to focus all in on 2023 and beyond. It's, you're going to see me as Investor Brian. Right.
Nice.
Because that's a big focus of mine and the people around me. And it's the most.
That's how you. So that's another way of changing people's lives.
Going a step, going further.
Right. So it's I'm doing the work.
Yep.
I'm teaching people.
Now
I'm doing this. And like you teach people how to invest.
Game over.
Game over. Right. Like where I grew up in Brooklyn, that didn't happen.
Brooklyn.
Yeah. So if you can teach people that, life-changing.
And it just makes sense.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. I mean, I know for the communities that you're from, communities I'm from, the playbook isn't readily available.
Nope.
And the reasons on why you don't or you can't or why you shouldn't are much larger than, at least in their perspective, than the reasons on why you should. And
100%.
With just more information, those odds start to dwindle and the reasons why you should grow.
Yep.
And it's with information. So anything that I've ever done, it's all about education, and I'm looking forward to sharing that education with the people. Like I feel like I went out, because the last 7 years of my life has been all about coaching and agent development.
Yeah.
Taking all of that and that.
So the next 5, 7, 10 is going to be.
Yeah, the art of coaching and development, taking that and resuiting that for my consumer base, my client, my friends, my family, my sphere of influence.
Yeah.
Because now that's where, if I go back and I look at, okay, what are the things that Brian does best, right? Not intending to speak in the third person because it sounds cool.
No, right? I like it.
And yet it's because, thinking outside of my body, right? It's, what do I do well? It's okay. I'll focus on education, and I love talking investing. Right, I'm a natural analytical mind.
Yes, totally.
And so for those who aren't or want to be or are, we speak that language of here's your ROI, right? Your return on investment, or cash rate of return. All of those things. P&L, income statement, balance sheets. How do you know what's a good investment in property or not? What's a good market to invest in? And we have a network across the country, being that we're in the number one real estate company in the world, and yet also we've been very extroverted, my wife and I, in knowing the real estate community, our top people. Like we're in every market in the country. So right now we're looking at property in Wisconsin. We're looking at property in Tennessee. I've talked to you about that. Yep. Shout out Joe Soto. He loans in multiple states. And really knowing what's going on, right? Yep. He didn't pay me to say that. I just said it because he's a really good lender. Right. And yet at the same time, you like my subliminals, I just jump in there randomly and really say something. Yes, right. And yet you get my point. Like my point is totally. It's we have a network that we have the ability to share with our clients. Yeah. So that's, you talking about next 5 years. My intention, if I go to 10, we've got 1,000 doors. own, right? 1,000 doors that are generating cash flow off of. And we've got one office now. We'll have 5. And I'll be vacationing 6 months out of the year and doing podcasts from the beach.
Yeah.
Ideally in Tahiti and really nice bungalows and stuff like that.
That's the move there.
That's the intention. And yet it could be 10, it could be 3, it could be 5.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't, honestly, the time, funny enough, when I was younger, and I'll wrap with this unless you have any questions, is in the very early, when I was 19, 20, 21, I was like, I don't have time. You know, I have deadlines and I apply deadlines and I would do this by this date and this time. I'm like, now it's like, you know what? Whether I do it in 2 years, or I do it in 5, or whether I do it in 10, honestly, I don't care because I love what I do anyway.
That's true.
As long as I can provide a living for my family, myself, we can have a lifestyle that's comfortable to us. We have all the necessities. I'm fortunate. I'm grateful. And I guess, and plus I get to do what I love to do.
Yeah.
You know what?
You're winning.
I'm winning every single day. Yeah. And I get to help my family, my extended family, and all those folks. So when we look at, our intentions, our goals, our focus is, 1,000 doors owned. We've got 5 offices across California that we're selling over $1 billion in closed sales volume. And really it's just helping people own property.
Yeah. I like talking about the specific goals. It was funny because I looked, the core has me write down my goals
all day,
right? And they have us do 5-year vision. So I looked at my 5-year vision from 2017.
Ooh, come on. Talk to me.
I've hit almost all of them.
Nice.
Right. And so I just wrote out. And what I learned is that those 5-year, the vision, the goals I wrote out 5 years ago were kind of like dog shit.
weren't big enough.
They weren't big enough. Right.
Nice.
And I looked at it and I was like, at the time I was like, there's no way. Like one of my goals was to go to Dubai. And I was like, I don't even think I spelt it right. But I wrote it down.
You put the I before the A.
Right. But my Puerto Rican bud has been to Dubai.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
And so now I just rewrote them. I just rewrote the 5-year vision and it was like astronomical.
Nice.
Right? Like it was huge. And I'm like, all right, let's just see. Right? If you're not
comfortable.
Yeah. You just got to, I think you got to expect more of yourself.
True.
Right? You can't set the bar so low. It's easy to set the bar low. It's easy to be like, I want to do this.
Right.
But you set the bar high. You say, I want to have $1 billion. Well, you know what? If you get to 900 million, that's a really big win.
Yeah.
Right? So I think most of us out there, we don't set high enough goals. I think you have to set those goals that make you uncomfortable. You have to set those goals that you go, damn.
Well, to that point, Joe, I mean, it's not until, I don't know who's going to get this later. And it's not until I set goals that were 4X.
What you wanted.
Right. What I wanted is until I hit that number.
Yeah.
Which is a record high. So it's not until I set my sights higher
that I
hit
that's where I wanted to be.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where life is improved, right? Living situation, lifestyle is improved just by setting my sights higher.
Yes.
Which is a record high in itself.
Yeah.
And yet, although I'm looking for a huge growth and opportunity and all that kind of stuff, until I started looking higher and considering bigger actions, bigger activities.
Yeah.
And that first thought process, when you start to create those numbers, like, damn, how many people I need to talk to? How many appointments do I have to go on?
Yep.
How many contracts do I have to take? How many, whatever it is. And you're like, damn, I can do it. And yet it's also, I've never done that before.
Yeah.
Right. And so then it's depending on where you are, you may look at the numbers.
See, I look at all of it and I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not intimidated by it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's totally doable. But it's funny because that 5-year vision, I wrote down like I would own a boat. Dude, the only boat I'd ever been on was the Staten Island ferry. I was like, your boy Joe has owned 2.
No connection to that whatsoever.
I'm thankful for my in-laws, but they've made me buy 2 boats in the last 3 years. But I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? I wrote down like some crazy stuff. So I urge anybody out there that if you're writing down goals, you're looking at a 5-year or a 10-year vision, dream big, Write it down bigger than you ever thought was humanly possible.
And that's another point. Yeah, most folks don't give themselves credit of what they can do. Most people don't know what they can do until they really focus.
For sure.
Right? And this really just comes down to focus. How bad do you want it? How much do you want it? And if you're willing to go after it, go do it. You know? And the other thing why most goals don't hit is because they don't bring their environment into the goals.
Yes.
Meaning that they don't tell their spouse, they don't tell their kids, and then now all of a sudden their spouse isn't clear on why they're working so late. Their spouse isn't clear on why they're working on the weekends.
Good advice.
They don't know what it's gonna do for them, not only for that person and yet the spouse and the kids. So I often tell folks, like, well, as soon as you get done with this 7-week course, right, called Bolt, right, and make sure that you set something that you're going to do with the family, because you may have to work more than you've ever worked in the last year for this 7 weeks. Right? We give them big goals, we give them big trajectories, big expectations. Do it. And in order for you to do that, you've got to get alignment. We actually have them sign in a commitment form. Nice. I'm committed to doing this, and that. Two things that I have to bring is desire and commitment, and then have a conversation with the family. And nice. So it's one of those things that helps bring alignment in the household to say, hey, when we do this, kids, I take these amount of contracts, I take these amount of closings, I do this, whatever. We're gonna go to Disneyland for a week. We're gonna go, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
that's the key. So it's about creating, because we know the rate of divorce and whatnot in real estate and financial services is so high. Yeah, it's I believe it has a lot to do with that. We're just a lot of people
there's not
lack of alignment in the household. Yeah. So if I could share one thing, if there's one thing to take away, forget all the BS that I've said. It's not BS, it's my story, and yet it might be BS to you, and yet something that might apply to you is make sure that your family knows your goals, their alignment, and they'll even help you. Your kids will say, hey, Mom, Dad, did you get that listing today?
Yeah.
Did you get that?
Especially as they get older.
Oh, yeah.
They will tell you. They will hold you accountable, and there's nothing worse than when your kid asks you if you've done something and you haven't. Hey, Dad, did you get a listing today?
No, I didn't.
And you're like, no, I put out fires all day. I was a fireman.
Like, why would you do that? Do you get paid to put out fires, Dad?
Yeah, I thought you said your goal was to get listings. I know, but right now I'm a firefighter.
Why would you do that?
Wow, man. Right? So super awesome, dude. This was great, man. I am super grateful for you being with me and spending some time. I know time is the most valuable asset that we got.
Bro, I don't even know. I just came here. I'm chatting with a friend, so we just had a conversation. I don't even know if it's helpful.
No, this is good, man. This is all gold. It's all stuff that we've all struggled with. We all deal with, right? It's your own personal journey and what you've gone through, and I'm excited to see. I've seen from college classroom to now, right? And I'm excited to see from now until eternity, man. And it's going to be a beautiful thing, and I'm excited to be along for the ride.
Yeah, shoot, I'll just say it right now. Next time I come back, we're getting into the tactics of owning, investing, flipping, ownership, all of that. So 12 months, I'll be back.
I love it. I love it.
Set the date. I'll be back in 12 months.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate you. We love you. Make it a great day. And quick shout out to our sponsor. Almost forgot our sponsor. Shout out to our sponsor, Comma Insurance. Guys, awesome. Tim Jarvis, my man, he'll hook you up.